So, we're going to go over research in psychology today. This is something that is kind of close to my heart, I guess you could say, because I absolutely love research. I like that it can give us kind of an idea of what's going on. It doesn't give us reasons necessarily, because we can't prove anything in psychology. That's one thing that you learn, that you can't prove anything. So we hear all these people on TV and they're like, it's been proven in psychology that. Not really. It's been supported in psychology, but not proven. So with research, we can support our theories, we can support our hypothesis, but we can't prove anything. It's been proven. It's been clinically shown that. It's been clinically tested and revealed that. Those are the kind of language that you'll hear from people who are in the field. All right, so the importance of research. Well, through systematic research, we're able to rid ourselves of preconceived notions and suspicions. Its goal is to gain objective understanding of ourselves and the world. And scientific knowledge is empirical, which means it's grounded with evidence. So we use evidence to find that. And the problem for psychology is that while behavior is observable, the mind is not. So we can't really prove anything. We can't prove why the person is sad, or why the person is happy, or why people have mob mentality when stuff is going on. It's not something we can prove per se. It's something that we can investigate. But like here, there used to be a saying, witch riding your back, or the demons got you down. And people would wake up in their sleep and they'd feel frozen. They'd feel like paralyzed, like they couldn't move. And so people would say there was a witch riding your back. A very common saying, but then later we found out it's not really what it was. It was actually just sleep paralysis. It's where you fall asleep, you go down through theta, through delta, and as you come up through delta, your body goes into a sleep paralysis to prepare you for REM sleep. So that way you're not punching people in your sleep while you're dreaming about being a boxer. So it's so you don't act out your dreams. You have that sleep paralysis. And that's kind of a myth that was kind of exposed when we learned about sleep paralysis, the myth of the witch riding your back or the demon holding you down. All right, so the use of research information. Well, we use it to link exposure to media and violence. We've looked at that. Hi. Oh, you just got mute. Okay. We use it to show media violence and aggression. This has been argued for 60 years, guys. 60 years we've been discussing this. Inconclusive, okay? You can pick a camp you want to be on. If you think that video games make people violent, you're going to have plenty of research to support that. If you think video games do not make people violent, you're going to have plenty of research to support that. It's circular reasoning, even with the research. And that's something we're going to talk about later when we look at in future chapters, when we talk about actual aggression. So, but very interesting that it's still an unresolved issue in psychology, because every so often it comes up again. Oh, these video games makes kids violent, and then it goes away, and then it comes back. So it's still an argued concept or idea that media can cause violence. Do programs such as DARE actually work, or some not, or not? Someone uses alcohol or other drugs. Is it effective on making someone not use the drugs? Well, guess what? Data doesn't support it at all. We've done tons and tons of data on the DARE program, the Just Say No program. It doesn't work. And yet we keep funneling tons and tons of money into a program that doesn't work. So that's a good thing. Also, when someone makes a claim, like the Skechers shoes, if you wear these Skechers shoes, they're going to make you thin. It's going to make you exercise. It's going to give you a tight legs. All right, whatever. It's an unfounded claim. Not only that, but guess what? It was actually hurting people. They were rolling their ankles. So when we start thinking about research, fact versus opinion, anecdotal versus what's actually happening, facts are observable realities. Opinions are personal. And that is, I am not a judgy person. And I have friends that still have very solid opinions. And even though I can show them facts that completely stomp out that opinion, they're still kind of like, oh, well, I still believe this and this is why. And I'm like, okay, well all right. So there are some things that hold us really, really tight when it comes to our opinions. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're just really strong opinions. Are they based in fact? Maybe not, but it's really kind of hard. So, I mean, don't, like, for example, the wristband you wear. Here it is. Here's a picture of the Power wristband. But there's these wristbands that people are wearing that says takes arthritis away. My grandmother had one. She put it on. She said, I think I'm feeling better. And I was like, that is wonderful. Even though I know there is zero research to support it, it's completely placebo, meaning that it doesn't actually work. The person just believes it might work, so they feel a little better. After about 2 weeks, she said, I don't think it's working so much anymore. And I was like, oh, well, do you think we need to get you a new one? I'm not going to tell my 92-year-old grandmother, she's passed away now, she's been gone now for 10 years, but at the time, I'm not going to tell my 92-year-old grandmother, oh, that doesn't work, Grandma. It's a waste of money, Grandma. If she thinks it works, all right, that's fine. So there's a lot of stuff out there like that. So that's what happens in psychology and in other research fields. You start to learn what's real and what isn't, what's fact versus opinion. So good stuff. Deduction versus induction. Deductive versus inductive reasoning. Deduction is top-down reasoning, whereas induction is bottom-up or data-driven, okay? Deduction starts with a generalization that's tested against real-world observations. All men are mortal, okay? All men are mortal. I am a man, therefore I am mortal, okay? So that's kind of the deduction. So it's a guaranteed truth. Whereas induction uses empirical observations to formulate theories, which generate a hypothesis, which are then tested through deduction. It's a likelihood of truth. Basketball players are tall. I am tall. I must be a basketball player. Well, all basketball players are tall. You are tall. You must play basketball. So then we investigate that, okay? Is that true? It's something that we've observed. It's something we've seen. Then we test it to see, is it actually true? Is it truth? Okay, that's the induction. So theories and hypothesis, and you are welcome to unmute yourself and pop in if you have a question or something. Absolutely. Feel comfortable to do that, okay? All right, theories and hypotheses. A theory is a well-developed set of ideas that explain an observed phenomenon, like psychoanalytic theory, or the theory of cognitive development by Piaget, or there's theories basically mean that it's not something that's been proven. It's something that we are studying, and based on our study, we've come to this conclusion. So like I said, we have, it is not the theory of gravity. It is the law of gravity, because we have proven that gravity absolutely exists through physics. So that's why physics and biology, they get to have laws. We don't have laws in psychology. We just have theories. It was theorized, mate selection there's a theory of mate selection in human beings. Well, do you think that theory maybe has kind of shifted with newer research in 2020 than what it was in 1950? A little bit. It has. It shifted a bit. So hypothesis is a testable prediction, often worded as an if-then statement. It bridges the gap between ideas and reality. So if an individual consumes X amount of alcohol, they will have slower reaction time on reactionary testing. It's a hypothesis. So if an individual then okay? A scientific hypothesis is falsifiable. It's capable of being shown to be incorrect, and it provides confidence that the information is correct, okay? So when we create your hypothesis, it's kind of like, I think this is what's going to happen. And then you test to see what is really happening. So we need to collect data in psychology. Data collection for any science field, data is your big deal. Data is important. And as we start finding even more and more so, like in college in general, we try to collect data for this, data for that. well, what does the data say about our students? What does the data say about coffee drinkers? Like, we are a data society, okay? Data or clinical case studies, a clinical or case study focuses on one person, okay? So when we're doing a clinical or a case study, we're focusing on one person or a small group. The reason we do this is because sometimes there are things that there's just not enough people to actually do a large database collection. So you're doing a case study. My daughter, for example, who is pictured here as the dragon, she is part of a case study for kids with Dravet syndrome. It is a very rare syndrome. So she is in a category where we are trying to learn more about it, so we can find, hopefully eventually a cure for, it's a genetic disorder, eventually a cure, obviously. But for right now, like, how do we treat? How are other people being treated? So it's very important that she's part of these clinical or case studies. However, there's issues with generalizing case studies to the general population or to others. Like, even with when we're looking at marketing. Okay, so psychology is all over the place, by the way, guys. Psychology is immensely amazing. So marketing. If I go, I don't know, and usually if I'm in class, I'll be like, raise your hands if you live here, you live here, you live here. So, but let's say somebody that lives in Ware Shoals, and when you're driving out and you're in Ware Shoals, there's like this little gas station, and this gas station sells bait. Okay, it sells night crawlers and all kind of other bait things and fishing stuff and all of that. There's another gas station that goes out towards Anderson that sells all kind of bait and hunting gear and all of that. If you went into one of those two gas stations and you were like, oh, well, I guess all the places in the South sell bait, that wouldn't be generalizable, okay? You can't take that store that sells those worms and stick it in the middle of Greenwood and think that it's going to be successful. It's probably not. Or in the middle of Atlanta. It's probably not going to be successful in the middle of Atlanta, because they're not buying bait. They're not buying night crawlers. There's no reason for them to have it. So you've got to think about these case studies and whether or not they're actually applicable to larger populations. So you have to be careful when you do just that small observation. After a long enough time, like with Dravet syndrome, the small disorder, after a long enough time, enough data has been collected that now we can start making that leap to the whole population of kids with the disorder. All right, next is naturalistic observation. This is where we basically just observe in context of nature. So, like, for example, if I'm wanting to work with a kid with ADHD, getting those forms filled out and checking those boxes, that's great. But actually if I'm going to develop a diagnosis of ADHD, I'm going to need to go observe kids in the classroom, observe kids on the playground, observe kids in their home. And that's what they did back in the late 70s, early 70s, mid 70s. They started doing research on, what they were seeing with these kids who were unable to focus. They were having these issues. And that's where they kind of created the new diagnosis of ADHD, which has evolved over time. But that's where essentially they started observing in context. Jane Goodall spent 5 decades observing chimpanzees. So that was very interesting. That's we found a lot about hierarchy behavior, socialization, and which we applied then to human beings, and then observed human beings and said, well, are we doing this too? Is this part of do we behave this way as well? So it's a very high degree of what's called ecological validity. So, like, for example, if you just test a child and say, well, they test ADHD, watching them in their actual environment, this shows you a little bit more of what's actually going on. So it's more helpful. The downside, though, is time and money. It's very, very expensive